Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. And as always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform that you will find on Instagram and podcasts like this one, obviously, YouTube, books, threads, TikTok, and more. If there is a social media platform out there, you can guarantee that Sugar Mama TV is on it. Hello, Canna.
Good morning.
Now, Canna, today's topic is one that is very, very close to your heart, I suspect, because it's also been your career. We're talking about financial advice.
And it's about helping people and getting people in front of people that can help them even more so.
So it is one that you are very passionate about. And we're talking not just about financial advice, but we're talking about the different types of advice, the benefits, and importantly, I think as well, you can't kind of dodge this part, the cost, including some low-cost options, which I think is really exciting. Low-cost options to help you get your money sorted out. And we have some help today, which I'm excited about this because I reckon, Canna, that we have found someone who I suspect is equally as passionate as you are, which is actually quite a frightening thought. The fact that there's two of you out there as enthusiastic about helping people and about financial advice. Karen Ely is a financial advisor and now a wealth coach working with NobleOak's financial planning service, Wealth Maximizer, a terrific supporter of this podcast. And I'll just mention quickly, NobleOak has a great offer for our listeners. Go to the website at wealthmaximizer.com.au to receive a free 25-minute goal-setting session with a wealth coach available for a limited time. That's wealthmaximizer.com.au. Karen Ely, welcome to How Do They Afford That?
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Now, remember, as we go through this podcast, this information is of a general nature only. It doesn't take into consideration your objectives, financial situations or needs. Consider if it's right for you. Read the financial services guide and T's and C's on site before proceeding. Wealth Maximizer is operated by NobleOak Services Limited ACN 112981718 AFSL 286798. I can now take a breath. And I can now actually just take a step back because I feel like the two of you may never have actually met, but I feel like you could just be kindred spirits.
I feel like we don't really need you right now. You can just take a seat.
I'll just back out, shall I?
We'll just have a chat to ourselves.
Karen, so lovely to meet you and thank you for coming on the show. I'm really intrigued. You've pivoted in your career, being a licensed financial advisor and now including, wealth coach offering. What drives you and why did you decide to, diversify your services for people?
Yeah, so I was a financial advisor for 16 years. I had my own firm in Adelaide and I really love what I do. So being able to help someone with their finances, because money's such an integral part of our lives. So to be able to do that and help people, I really loved. But in the last few years of doing it, I got quite disheartened because there were many people that needed financial advice and guidance, but they couldn't afford to access financial advisors. So when the opportunity came up to work for a business in Sydney that was wanting to solve that affordability in financial advice problem, I jumped at the chance to join them as a wealth coach.
And that is interesting, isn't it? Because we always talk about the need to get financial advice, but there is a certain irony to it that for some who actually need it most, the people who might have absolutely kind of no idea where to even start, that in many cases it could be seen as being unaffordable from the outside, but there are actually now these kind of lower cost options. I want to start right at the very beginning though and kind of work our way through the different options if we can, because today we are looking about kind of financial advice for the budget conscious. And if we start basically at the free or low cost options, what is the role of a financial counsellor? And I suppose I could actually just direct these questions to either of you too, because I suspect you're both qualified to do it. But Karen, what do you see the role of a financial counsellor to be?
Well, I see their role as providing advice and support to people that have got financial difficulties. So they're not able to meet their current financial obligations, they might be in debt. And so a financial counsellor's role is to help people manage their finances, get them out of debt and work towards achieving some level of financial stability. And what they do is they identify the root causes of their financial challenges, so how they got themselves into debt. Then they can also advocate for the client to negotiate with providers such as banks or mobile phone plans or things like that to help them work out a flexible payment option. Then they can also give them access to financial assistance programs or other resources to help get them out of debt and into that financial stability. And as you said, Michael, there's no costs. They're typically government funded or through charities.
So what are the signs then that we need to go and see a financial counsellor, and how quickly do we need to act on this?
So I think for someone that's identified that they need a financial counsellor, it's they can't meet their current obligations. So they're not able to meet their debt repayments, whether it be credit cards, afterpay, or they're just really struggling with the cost of living and their income isn't sufficient enough to meet all their expenses, and they are concerned about getting themselves into debt. So going to see a financial counsellor at that earliest opportunity will help them just kind of get on the right path.
So it's kind of like the crisis care of the financial
really is. Yep.
services. Yeah,
absolutely. If we look at the ecosystem, that's financial counsellors really serve an important role for people that are struggling financially and not able to meet their debt obligations.
And it's so important, isn't it, to know that that is out there? Because obviously,
Absolutely.
like when that pressure is building and when people feel like they can't meet their obligations and they're going to kind of let people down, it is just such an important message to keep repeating that you are not alone in that situation and that there is help out there when you really need it.
Exactly. And I think people that are in that situation, there's a certain amount of stress and fear and guilt around that.
Yeah.
And we don't like talking about it, but these professionals are there to actually support people in those circumstances. They deal with them every day. So they're in a great place to be able to help them. And it's much better to get help earlier on than just get into that snowball of debt.
Financial coaches or wealth coaches, and I suppose this is kind of really the sweet spot of the conversation today. What we're trying to find out a little bit more about. How does this differ from the full service, the full financial advice kind of package, which we'll kind of get to that shortly. If we're working our way up the ladder, the cost ladder, which I don't even think is a real analogy. I think I've just made that up. But if we are climbing the cost ladder at the moment, and we've started with the free rung, and now we're moving to a slightly... So it's a shocking analogy, isn't it? Like I have tripped over the ladder myself right now. I have fallen clean off it. Help me out here, Karen. Wealth coaches. What is the role of a wealth coach compared to, say, the full service financial planner?
Yeah, so I think a financial coach or a wealth coach can bridge that advice gap between financial counsellors and financial advisors because they kind of sit in the middle there. So financial coaches or wealth coaches are a relatively new offering in Australia. And if you kind of think of them like you would think of a sports coach or a fitness coach, they'll assess your current situation, they'll look at your current abilities and skills, and then they'll help you prioritise your goals. What are the most important things to you? And then the coach can provide you with recommended financial strategies to implement. They'll give you financial knowledge and also accountability to support you to actually achieving those goals on your own. So they typically don't recommend financial products like financial advisors do. Some can if they're licensed to, but that wealth coach is going to give you all the knowledge and the skills so you can go and do it yourself.
So what are the costs involved then?
Yeah, so the cost can be somewhere between $600 to $1,500, and it really depends on how much support or how many sessions you need with the wealth coach. So the more that you need, the more that it costs. But you could start somewhere around $600.
All right, so it's essentially bridging the gap. And so if we're talking, $600 to $1,500, that kind of sits right in the middle then between kind of the emergency, the financial kind of counsellor to the full service. Let's talk about that quickly. The financial advice, the full service, what does that cover and how much does that cost? Now knowing what a wealth coach does sitting in the middle.
So similar to a coach, a financial advisor are going to help clients achieve their financial objectives, and that might be things like saving for retirement or growing their wealth. And they get to know their client situation. They look at their income and assets, how much risk that they're prepared to take, and then they'll recommend appropriate investment strategies and financial products. And they might be things such as shares, managed funds, superannuation or insurances. And typically with a financial advisor, you have that ongoing relationship where you also continue to pay ongoing fees, and the advisor will manage your investments, look at your tax, monitor performance, and make adjustments as needed. So typically the average cost for a financial advisor is about $3,500 upfront, and then each year ongoing costs.
What about robo-advice? Where do you see this fitting in the overall financial advice ecosystem?
So robo-advice essentially refers to automated, algorithm-driven financial planning and investment management that's offered online, and there's minimal or no human contact. So robo-advice uses sophisticated algorithms and software and provides clients with investment advice and portfolio management. So it's typically hands-off. It's all online with very little human contact.
Okay. All right. So we've got, I don't know whether this is a ladder with 4 rungs then to it.
I think we've just brought a 4th one in.
A 4th rung. And it feels like we've kind of laid the cement. We've put our, I understand the basics, the ecosystem here. We put our ladder in it. Now we're climbing up it. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, I now want to know basically how you know which one is right for you, kind of the different factors that go into whether it is just about cost, whether it is about kind of where you're at in your life, whether it's about how much you know to do for yourself and therefore you don't need as much advice. And so how you make those the right decision now that we know how much a financial counsellor costs, how much a wealth advisor costs, how much the full service financial planner costs. Feels like we've got all of the information we need. Now we're going to put it into practice. We'll take a quick break and come back in a moment. Hannah, we are talking today about financial advice, and we are talking about some low-cost options, or just the variety of options, particularly for those who are perhaps budget conscious and just needing to get some advice and not really knowing where to start. We are joined today in the studio by Karen Ely, who is a financial planner, and she works as a wealth coach with NobleOak's Wealth Maximizer program, which is a fantastic supporter of this podcast. Head along to wealthmaximizer.com.au. Now, Karen, we've covered the financial services ecosystem, so we understand the different elements of it. How do you know, though, which one is right for you? Is it just going to be your budget, or is it your goals? Is it where you want to end up, or is it how much you already know and kind of the size of your appetite for doing it yourself? Or is it a mix? I'm just kind of giving you so many options here, probably too many options.
I think it's a combination of all of those.
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, it would be about what are your needs at the moment? So do you have the skills and competence that you can do a few things on your own, and then you just need a coach to help facilitate and maybe do an audit of what you're currently doing? Or perhaps you're just starting out and don't have a lot of financial assets and you're just starting that growth journey. So a coach might be applicable there. Or perhaps you're in a situation where you don't have time or you don't have interest and you just want someone to manage it all for you, make all the investment options and decisions. Then a financial advisor might be the better option for you. And obviously you need to have the money to actually pay for those fees.
How does the NobleOak Wealth Maximizer program help people with their financial situation and their financial goals?
So I mentioned before about robo-advice. What Wealth Maximizer is essentially a hybrid of robo-advice and a wealth coach. So you get the best of both worlds. So a client starts their journey online, they go through and register, and then we take the clients through a goal-setting process because we want them to really understand what are their most important goals, what are they wanting to achieve, and how can they use money to do that. So you can either do it as a single person or as part of a couple. And at this point, when you're going through the goal-setting process, sometimes it's helpful to get a bit of support so they can go and book a time to schedule with a wealth coach and they can walk them through the portal online. So they'll set up their goals, and then they'll enter their details like income and expenses, and they'll break those expenses down into different categories, whether it be rent or mortgage, lifestyle, utilities. Then they'll also put in their asset balances like bank accounts, super, and then debts. Then you'll go through a process of answering questions about your financial behaviours. So what are some of the things that you've done over the past month? And that might be things like, when was the last time you reviewed your interest rates on your loans? When did you last look at your superannuation investment options or your bank accounts? What kind of things are you currently doing? Are you salary sacrificing? Are you claiming tax deductions? And so We're also wanting to find out, what are you interested in? Are you more interested in shares, or are you more interested in property or superannuation? Or maybe it's a combination of both. And so you put all of this information. And look, it's okay if you've done none of those things that I've just said. Wealth Maximizer is all about meeting the client at where they're at. So once the client's finished entering all of their information in, Wealth Maximizer will produce a wealth health score, which is basically an assessment tool of where they are today and some of those financial areas where they might need some support. So they've entered all of their information in, and then the client can book in a time with a wealth coach, and they're all experienced and licensed financial advisors, and have a meeting with the wealth coach. So in the background, though, those algorithms and financial logic software goes and assesses the client's goals, where they are now, and they're going to help them determine their likelihood of achieving those goals. So they'll do the financial projections and modelling using their cash flow and their assets that they've got to say, how likely is it that you'll achieve your goal? Perhaps it's paying off the mortgage in 10 years or saving up an emergency fund of $10,000 in 2 years' time. So it'll go on and assess all of that. And then within the program, there's over 120 different financial strategies. And so what the software will do is it'll go and pick 16 strategies for the client to implement, to recommend to the client, based on their goals and their current financial situation. So the algorithms determine those 16 financial strategies. And then there's a financial advisor that will actually go and have a look at the client's situation, and then have a look at what has the software program recommended as the most appropriate financial strategies. And so if they think there's some changes that to be made, the financial advisor can make those changes. So then what happens is a statement of advice is prepared. And so in Australia, whenever financial advice is given, it needs to be in writing and in a document called a statement of advice. So the software programs prepares a statement of advice. The client receives a document. It's a really clear PDF that summarises their current situation, their goals, and gives them some financial projections. So the client can review that before meeting with the wealth coach. And then within that document, they're given 3 wealth strategies or options. And essentially, the client gets to choose, do I want my wealth creation to be focused on shares or equities? Do I want my wealth creation focus to be on property? Or maybe it's diversified and a combination of all of those things, or superannuation.
The thing that I like about this, Karen, is the fact that it kind of combines the best of both worlds, in terms of, when Karen mentioned kind of robo advice before, and the fact that it uses the power of technology. It kind of assesses and kind of uses that whole range of potential outcomes, and uses technology to kind of go through those. But there's still human eyes on it, and there's still a sense check, and there is still a human face and a human there's there and able to talk you through it. So it feels a lot more kind of personal than just going perhaps for straight up kind of robo advice where you were talking to a chatbot kind of thing. Whereas here, that this is actually a real person who is able to look at it and go, yes, okay, maybe on paper that might work, but I've talked to this person and really it may not be the right outcome for them. So it feels like it's kind of uses the power of technology, but with a human touch to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the intention of Wealth Maximizer. They really wanted to give the client the experience of going to see a financial advisor, but just at a different cost point for that. So yeah, all of the financial advisors will go and have a look at and just make sure it's personalised and appropriate for the client.
And I like the fact that one of the questions is, how likely is this outcome actually going to be achieved? Because, I mean, you could say anything. You could go into a meeting and say, yes, I'm going to save kind of 50% of my income every month for the next kind of 10 years, and I'm going to pay off my mortgage by the time I'm 50 or something. But it's like when you go to the physio, and the physio gives you a whole stack of exercises to do, and you go and you say to the physio and you look them in the eye and say, I'm going to do these exercises every day and it's going to fix my lower back. And then you walk out there and you never do the exercises again, right? And it actually kind of, God, it feels like
I'm just a sore back. I feel like there's a bit of a confession here.
I do. And every time I go to the physio, I actually have this conversation with them, and they give me the exercises, and I swear to them that I'm going to do it. And he is clearly making an assessment of me and going, this guy's not going to do it. This is not a likely outcome. And I like the fact that the same thing is going on here, that it is actually looking at it going, okay, how likely is this outcome? How are we best going to be able to assist this client to actually achieve this outcome, rather than just going, okay, this is what it says on paper. This is what the kind of computer says. Let's apply some kind of human understanding and intuition and just awareness of the whole process and help us get to that point. That's what I like about these things. And yes, I do have a slightly sore back.
Exactly, because I think personal finance is 20% knowledge, 80% behaviour. So by asking those behavioural questions, we've got a really good insight as to, is the client going to need a little bit more support when it comes to implementing and actioning these 16 strategies? And what we do with those 16 strategies is we chunk it down into 90-day cycles. So the first 90 days, here's the 4 things to focus on. Just do these 4 things. And then in 3 months' time, you're going to get the next list and the instructions and the resources and tools to help you implement those. So you actually achieve those 16 financial strategies if you want to over a 12-month period.
Mm.
Oh, that makes it so much kind of more manageable, doesn't it?
It feels very approachable, but in a very gentle way where you're just leaning in but really focusing on empowerment.
Absolutely. So we're giving them all the knowledge, the confidence and the tools so they can go and implement these things themselves. But then they've got someone that they can reach out to if they need some extra support. And part of the Wealth Maximizer service is that we run monthly group coaching sessions. So you've got your individual wealth coach that you've got access to, but you also have access to the whole range of wealth coaches and financial advisors. And every month we spend an hour talking about a different topic so that they can log in and book in. And we might be talking about how to be tax effective. We might talk about superannuation, or if you've never invested in shares before, how do you get started? And we run these hour sessions once a month that the clients can tap into as well.
I like that. I mean, Karen, clearly you've just come into the studio just for me to tell you all the things I like about what you do. But I like the fact... It's
nice to hear, Michael.
I like the fact that there's ongoing education, that you kind of pick up on those things that might be kind of blind spots almost, and just kind of help to make them areas that feel kind of achievable, that they're not things that you won't attempt anymore because you don't have any understanding. That clearly we are all about financial literacy. It is all just about trying to kind of demystify and clear up a few of these things. So I really like the fact that is part of the Wealth Maximizer goal. I have learnt a lot, and I'm just going to tell you one more thing I like. I like the fact that it's got that price point that is really that is more attainable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it might be that you use Wealth Maximizer or a financial coach to get financial advisor ready. So at least you're on the right path and you're doing the right things. And then in a couple of years' time, you've got the assets and the financial resources to pay a financial advisor to do it, should you choose to do that.
That feels like a fantastic point to wrap things up. Karen Early, money coach with NobleOak's Wealth Maximizer, a supporter of this podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure.
For more information on how Wealth Maximizer can help you achieve your financial goals, or to take advantage of NobleOak's offer of a free 25-minute goal-setting session with a wealth coach, head to wealthmaximizer.com.au. That's available for a limited time, so go to wealthmaximizer.com.au today. And Canna, if we want to continue our financial literacy journey with you, where do we find you?
The best place to stay in touch is at Sugarbummer TV on Instagram.
And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and the best thing you can do is tell somebody else, or better yet, send them this episode. Spread the word about How Do They Afford That? Thank you for your company. Join us again next week.